The time is precisely 6:15 p.m. This is the Sri Lanka Broadcasting Corporation. News edited by Lakshman Fonseca and read by Chandima Veerakorn. Headlines. The President has declared at the UN his readiness to address post-war reconciliation efforts with Tamil expatriates. TNA commends the invitation of the President to the Tamil diaspora for a formal discussion. Education Ministry is ready to provide Pfizer vaccines for the A-level students shortly. Doctors say youngsters are reluctant to get the COVID-19 jab. The Pfizer vaccine is to be vaccinated for children above 12 years of age. The investigations on the deletion of files from NMRA database will be completed within 2 weeks. UNP requests the government to cancel the current tender for the importation of organic fertilizer from China. The US Food and Drug Administration ruled that booster shots are not recommended for the average person. Local stories in detail. The President has declared in New York his readiness to have a dialogue with Tamil expatriates on a domestic mechanism to address post-war reconciliation efforts. The declaration was made when he met United Nations Secretary-General Antonio Guterres at the UN headquarters in New York. Having assured that there was no room for separatism to re-emerge in Sri Lanka, President Rajapaksa said all governments should be vigilant about religious extremism. The UN Secretary-General Antonio Guterres has told President Gotabaya Rajapaksa that the UN will provide its full support to Sri Lanka in moving forward to promote unity among different communities. Meanwhile, parliamentarian M.A. Sumanthiran of the Tamil National Alliance commends the invitation made by the President to the Tamil diaspora for a formal discussion. He said it is a good sign of the process of reconciliation. He said that there are large numbers of Tamils scattered all over the world who are actively supporting the Tamil diaspora. President Gotabaya Rajapaksa told the UN Secretary-General Antonio Guterres recently that the President is inviting the Tamil diaspora to deal with the process of reconciliation. Education Minister Dinesh Gunawardena says plans are underway to provide Pfizer vaccines to the students who are sitting for the advanced level examination this year. The Education Minister told Parliament today that discussions have already begun in this regard between the Education Ministry and the Health Ministry following the instructions of the President. Responding to a question raised by parliamentarian Patali Champika Ranawaka, the minister said A-level students would be provided with the Pfizer vaccine as the first step. It is reported that many youngsters among the 20 to 29 age group are reluctant to get the jab for COVID-19, saying that it may lead to infertility, while some prefer unproven natural remedies. Health authorities say that only an estimated 40% of the 20 to 29 age group had received the vaccines island-wide. They also said it was a very poor percentage at a time when Sri Lanka was aiming to inoculate all its citizens against the virus as soon as possible. Health authorities also stressed that there are some self-claimed Ayurvedic practitioners who were capitalizing on the situation by selling unproven herbal remedies, claiming that they would help cure the virus. Health authorities have urged the targeted population to keep aside their preferences and take the available vaccines soon. Doctors said that vaccination centers were drying up in several areas due to the lack of interest among the youngsters, even in Colombo. On the other hand, some youngsters demanding for the Pfizer and Moderna vaccines and were refusing to take the Sinopharm vaccine. Health authorities warn that while the risk of the Delta variant is causing severe symptoms in unvaccinated adults, the youngsters too needed to be vaccinated soon. A decision has been taken to provide Pfizer vaccines as a shield against COVID-19 virus for children above 12 years of age. LRH consultant pediatrician Dr. Deepal Pereira said the vaccination drive will be commenced at the Lady Ridgeway Hospital in Colombo from next week. Dr. Deepal Pereira said priority will be given to the children who are suffering from chronic illnesses. He said parents should report to the LRH with the children with immune deficiencies, lung diseases, heart, liver and kidney diseases, and those who are suffering from thalassemia. He said the vaccine will be administered to children under the supervision of consultants. Dr. Pereira also said no decision has been taken as yet to provide the vaccine for children under 12 years of age. The investigations on the deletion of files from the National Medicine Regulatory Authority (NMRA) database will be completed shortly. The Criminal Investigations Department and the University of Moratuwa are conducting joint investigations on the mysterious disappearance of files from the Lanka government cloud. Sri Lanka police said the final report will be produced to the court within 2 weeks. Some of the files from the NMRA database hosted by the Lanka government cloud and operated by the Information and Communications Technology Agency went missing in early July. State Minister Channa Jayasamana told Parliament today that over 6,000 files had been deleted, from which 3,137 files are related to registrations of drugstores-related issues. The Lanka government cloud is considered to be one of the most secured systems in the country, and the responsibility of ensuring its security is vested with the Information and Communication Technology Agency of Sri Lanka. Meanwhile, the service provider for the NMRA Epic Lanka Technologies said the deletion of data was the result of a human error or a mistake by an engineer. Meanwhile, professionals in the ICT sector question why there was no backup or disaster recovery system for the NMRA database in the Lanka government cloud. This news comes to you from the Sri Lanka Broadcasting Corporation. Moving on with the local stories. UNP Deputy Leader Parliamentarian Ruwan Wijewardena requests the government to cancel the current tender for the importation of organic fertilizer from China. He also says legal action should be taken against the people who were engaged with the transaction. Minister of Agriculture confirmed today that a microorganism identified as Erwinia was discovered in samples brought down unofficially to Sri Lanka and tested. The minister said the government will not allow any organic fertilizer that does not meet the SLS mandated standards to be released into the local market. Fertilizer imported to the country cannot contain pathogenic microorganisms that are harmful to animals, plants and humans. Minister Mahindananda Aludgamage said the supplier was revealed as Qingdao Sewin Biotech Group Company Limited, based in China. To in the local news, the headlines again. The President has declared at the UN his readiness to address post-war reconciliation efforts with Tamil expatriates. TNA commends the invitation of the President to the Tamil diaspora for a formal discussion. Education Ministry is ready to provide Pfizer vaccines for the A-level students shortly. Doctors say youngsters are reluctant to get the COVID-19 jab. The Pfizer vaccine is to be administered for children above 12 years of age. The investigations on the deletion of files from NMRA database will be completed within 2 weeks. UNP requests the government to cancel the current tender for the importation of organic fertilizer from China. That ends local news.
A mother knows the pain of each member of the family. Siddhalepa, the trusted relief for aches and pains.
An effective therapy for relief from cold, sneezing, flu, headaches, swelling due to toothaches, rheumatic, discomforts, and muscular aches and pains. Siddhalepa, the Veda Mahatmya in every home.
The main news story is brought to you by Siddhalepa Veda Mahatmya.
And on the main news story, a decision has been taken to provide Pfizer vaccines as a shield against COVID-19 virus for children above 12 years of age. LRH consultant pediatrician Dr. Deepal Pereira said the vaccination drive will be commenced at the Lady Ridgeway Hospital in Colombo from next week. Dr. Deepa Pereira said priority will be given to children who are suffering from chronic illnesses. He said parents should report to the LRH with the children with immune deficiencies, lung diseases, heart, liver and kidney diseases and those who are suffering from thalassemia. That ends the main news story.
The main news story was brought to you by Siddhalepa Vedamahatmya. Brush your teeth twice a day for healthy teeth and gums. Supiriviki and Kakulu, your trusted brands in oral care for many years.
Supiriviki Ayurvedic toothpaste for adults. Kakulu Ayurvedic toothpaste for kids. 9 Ayurvedic ingredients of Supiriviki will protect your teeth and strengthen your gums. Supiriviki and Kakulu, products from Siddhalepa.
And now in Watch Light.
A report reveals the pandemic year weight gain was about half of the rate of increase in obesity compared to what teens that age had shown over the past 20 years. It is required to address healthy lifestyle and obesity management during the pandemic as a key issue. New approaches could include recommending virtual activities to promote physical activities such as virtual group dancing activities, connecting families and engage in exercises regularly.
World News.
Headlines of the world news. The U.S. Food and Drug Administration's ruled that booster shots are not recommended for the average person. The EU plans to practice Green Deal to recover from the economic crisis induced by the coronavirus pandemic. Philippine President has approved the resumption of face-to-face classes in areas deemed low risk for COVID-19. The U.S. Food and Drug Administration's FDA ruled that booster shots are not recommended for the average person. It is recommended only those who are 65 and older or otherwise high risk for a severe case of COVID-19. Anthony Fauci, MD, the White House's chief COVID-19 advisor, recently voiced concern that some people are not following that advice. Even if you are over 65 or high risk, if you've been fully vaccinated with the Moderna vaccine or the Johnson & Johnson vaccine, you should not go out and get a Pfizer booster, he added. The EU unveiled plans to protect biodiversity across the 27 nations while building a more sustainable food system. The Commission is insisting to promote organic farming. In line with its ambition of cutting greenhouse gas emissions to zero by mid-century, the EU's executive arm wants to halve the use of chemical pesticides by 2030 and to ensure that at least 25% of agricultural land is reserved for organic farming. According to EU figures, agricultural activities generate about 10% of total greenhouse gas emissions. Stella Kyriakides, the EU Commissioner for Health and Food Safety, added so-called Green Deal will help the Union recover from the economic crisis induced by the coronavirus pandemic. Philippine President Rodrigo Duterte has approved the resumption of face-to-face classes in areas deemed low risk for COVID-19. Accordingly, up to 120 schools will join a 2-month pilot reopening run, his education minister said. The Philippines is among 17 countries globally where schools have been closed for the entirety of the pandemic. Education Secretary Leonor Briones said face-to-face learning will be limited to 3 to 4 hours per session, with consent from parents and guardians required. The pilot will cover 100 public schools and 20 private institutions, limiting the number of students. To end the world news, the headlines again. The U.S. Food and Drug Administration's ruled that booster shots are not recommended for the average person. The EU plans to practice Green Deal to recover from the economic crisis induced by the coronavirus pandemic. Philippine President has approved the resumption of face-to-face classes in areas deemed low risk for COVID-19. That ends the world news. Moving on with development news. The Urban Development Authority has allocated the Valikada Prison Chapel Ward and Prison Headquarters building for a luxury hotel project. The Valikada Prison complex will be moved to a land in Millava, Horana. The Prime Minister's office says once the move is completed, the Valikada prison premises in Borella will be set aside for investments. The estimated cost for the project is 30 billion rupees. State Minister Nalaka Godeheva says alternative strategies will be utilized to raise funds for the project as the government treasury will not be able to allocate funds at this critical juncture. That ends the development news.
Sports news.
And on sports news, former players and coaches across sport have joined a campaign by British dementia charity Alzheimer's Society to tackle the stigma around the neurodegenerative disease. It plans to support people affected by the condition on World Alzheimer's Day, which falls today. The Sport United Against Dementia campaign aims to increase the awareness and capacity of its support services and is backed by soccer greats such as Geoff Hurst, Dennis Law, as well as former cricketers Andrew Flintoff and Shane Warne. The campaign chair Richard Thompson said, "Sport was able to draw attention to an issue or cause like nothing else can." Manchester United and Scotland great Law, who was diagnosed with Alzheimer's and vascular dementia last month, is part of the campaign and along with his family has raised over £40,000 for the charity. Hurst, England's hat-trick hero from the 1966 World Cup final, backed the campaign after many of his international teammates, including Nobby Stiles and Jack and Bobby Charlton, were diagnosed with the condition. The campaign will fund research into the causes and risk factors of dementia, including a study with elite rugby players and an informal pilot study with top soccer players. That ends sports news.
A safe, easy and versatile app for all your banking needs. NSB Pay for monetary transactions, bill payments, reloads, credit card payments and Lanka QR transactions. A range of facilities with multiple account registrations. Access to your bank needs wherever you are. Download the NSB Pay app from the Play Store or the App Store for free now. For more information, call your nearest NSB branch or 0112 379 379. Conditions apply.
Business News, sponsored by National Savings Bank, the safest place for your money.
And on business news, the Lankan Angel Network, LAN, the country's largest network of angel investors, has appointed Chandi Dharmaratne as its chairperson for 2021-2022 at its most recent board meeting. Ms. Dharmaratne is the first woman to lead the Lankan Angel Network. Ms. Dharmaratne succeeds Mano Sekaram, founder, CEO, currently serving as the Vice President of Human Resources at Virtusa. Ms. Dharmaratne is responsible for the company's global HR automation strategy. With a career that began in New York, Ms. Dharmaratne returned to Sri Lanka and joined Mars Holdings. In 2013, she joined Virtusa as the head of HR for the Sri Lanka geography. That ends business news.
Business News, sponsored by National Savings Bank, the safest place for your money.
A safe, easy and versatile app for all your banking needs. NSB Pay for monetary transactions, bill payments, reloads, credit card payments and Lanka QR transactions. A range of facilities with multiple account registrations. Access to your bank needs wherever you are.
Moving on to economic news, the Pathfinder webinar on COVID-19 and the economy on the topic of which way now for Sri Lanka is scheduled for tomorrow, the 22nd of September, live at 2:30 p.m. The virtual discussion will be co-chaired by Dr. Indrajit Kumaraswamy, Distinguished Fellow, Pathfinder Foundation, and former Governor of the Central Bank of Sri Lanka, with the University of Colombo Professor of Economics, Professor Sirimal Aberatna. Dr. Ganeshan Vignaraja, Senior Research Associate, Overseas Development Institute, London, and Senior Visiting Fellow, PF, will deliver the main presentation on the economy of Sri Lanka. That ends economic news.
Weather report.
And finally, on the weather report, the Met Department says showers or thundershowers will occur at times in Sabaragamuwa, western and northwestern provinces, and in Kandy, Nuwara Eliya, Galle and Mathura districts. Fairly heavy showers, about 50 millimeters, can be expected at some places. Heavy rains were experienced in the Colombo and suburbs since early in the morning today. Highest rainfall, that of 98 millimeters, was reported from Algama, Kagalla, during the last 24 hours. Kalatuava and Padiyatalawa areas were also reported with heavy rains. Showers or thundershowers will occur at several places in north central, eastern and Uva provinces after 2 p.m. General public is kindly requested to take adequate precautions to minimize damages caused by temporary localized strong winds and lightning during thunder showers. That ends the weather report. And to conclude this bulletin of news, the headlines again. The President has declared at the UN his readiness to address post-war reconciliation efforts with Tamil expatriates. TNA commends the invitation of the President to the Tamil diaspora for a formal discussion. Education Ministry is ready to provide Pfizer vaccines for the A-level students. Doctors say youngsters are reluctant to get the COVID-19 jab. The Pfizer vaccine is to be administered to children above 12 years of age. The investigations on the deletion of files from NMRA database will be completed within 2 weeks. UNP requests the government to cancel the current tender for the importation of organic fertilizer from China. The US Food and Drug Administration's ruled that booster shots are not recommended for the average person. With that, we conclude this bulletin of news from the Sri Lanka Broadcasting Corporation.